Hello, it's Deborah from the attic, and today I want to show you how to make these lovely little pockets. You can fill these with folding things, folding money perhaps, and you can hang them on your tree as gifts, and we're going to make them just from little bits and bobs you may have around the house. I've used a brown paper bag as the basis for all of my little pockets, and all I've done is cut it down in such a way that I give myself a piece of paper which is about 8.5 inches long by around about 3 inches wide. You can choose a size that has the most pleasing dimensions for you or that will fit the gift that you intend to put into the pocket. Whatever size you do choose, I recommend that the folded edge at the top is an inch deep. And that's because we're going to punch a couple of holes in the top of there and we're going to add some hole reinforcement as well. To secure the sides, I'm going to glue down the inside using this 3-in-1 glue. The reason I'm using this particular glue is that sometimes when you stick two pieces of thin paper together, you can have a ridge where the glue line is. That doesn't happen with this glue. The sides of my pockets have dried lovely and smooth. There are no ridges here. Now I'm going to turn my attention to adding the little hole punch in the top. Now if you don't have a crocodile as I have here, which I'm using on the largest hole setting, you could use a normal ring punch. I've punched through all of those top layers with the flap folded down because this is going to form our closure mechanism. I'm going to work on the hole reinforcers because I'm going to design those in such a way that they will match everything else on my little pocket. And I'm going to use Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink and I'm going to apply it very roughly to a piece of scrap cardboard. Now of course you can buy hole reinforcers and then you can ink them up to suit the colour of your project. I like making my own just because I happen to have a couple of punches that make it really easy for me to do this. And this makes it look as if I've done a really bad job of the blending, but actually it's the texture that I want, so this finish is fine. I'm using my crocodile on the largest hole setting to add some holes all through this piece of card. And then I've got a hole punch, which is the most useful size I have. It's a 1/2 inch hole punch, and it fits perfectly around holes made with a crocodile in order to make hole reinforcers. Always make sure, if you're going to do this, that you punch the crocodile holes first. It makes it much easier to align the larger punch around the holes and have them in the center. If I bring back my little bag, you can see how the roughness of the inking suits the project. And I'm going to use a thin line of liquid glue to stick these onto my bag. If you don't have a 1/2 inch hole punch, as I didn't have for a long time, you could do what I had to do before I found mine, and you can cut these out by hand. They look a little bit more raggedy, but actually for this project that would still work as well. I have a piece of thin twine here because I want to show you how we're going to create the closure mechanism and the dangle from the tree. I've cut two pieces of twine which are roughly double the length of the bag. You can do it longer or shorter, that's just to give you a starting point. And then I'm going to thread both of these through the two holes that we've created and tie a little bow in the front. I'm not very good at bows, so this might be a knot. The important thing is that it's a closure. This loop at the back of the pocket is how it's going to dangle from your tree, and you can make that loop shorter or longer depending on how you like things to hang from your tree. Now we get to the fun part of how you can decorate your pockets. I've moved on to a white piece of paper to help you see this a little more easily. Now this is a piece of paper from the bag which I've punched using an edge puncher. So this is where you get to try out all of those toys that maybe have been lingering in the bottom of your desk for a little while. On this one, I've added a piece of paper. I've also added some stamping around the side and a tiny little piece of lace at the bottom. The top I've left clear. I have a frond that has come from a die cut from maybe several Christmases ago, and I've added some ink around the outside. You can see the difference in the coloration. And I'm going to stick this onto the front of my pocket. I think it's a very festive looking decoration. And part of the fun that I've had putting this project together has been going back through old stamps for Christmas that maybe I haven't used for a little while, and old die cuts that I maybe haven't used either, that have been feeling a little lonely and neglected sitting in the back of drawers and cupboards and boxes. And I've had some real fun putting all of these pockets together. I've done a selection just to give you a few ideas of what you might be able to use yourself without having to go out and buy anything special, because this project has been designed to allow you to revisit old friends and use up things you already have around you. I want to give you lots of ideas for how you can decorate your pockets. So here's one using a die cut. This is a die cut that I particularly like. So this way I get the maximum use out of it that I can. You can see I've already used this on another project because it's coloured brown, and I'm using my vintage photo again. I'm just going to go very, very gently over the top of my die cut. When I remove the lacy mask, you'll be able to see a beautiful lacy design underneath. And if you don't have a lacy die, you could always use a doily instead. I'm going to add layers to this pocket so we have a collage effect, and use whatever you have to hand. It could be a scrap that you've torn from a book, it could be a stamp that you've stamped out onto a piece of paper that you've ripped around the edges of. Use what you have, keep it loose and keep it fun. There's nothing prescriptive about any of this, just match together the things that you think will go together. Or if you're doing a pocket for a specific person, maybe you could theme it to their interests. To finish off this pocket, I've tied my bow and given myself a slightly longer loop at the back. This means that if you wanted to dangle this from a mantelpiece or a hook, you can. In this pocket, I'm reusing the idea of a die as a mask, and I'm running some ink all over this, and this will make a great background. I'm going to add a torn piece of paper, which has had some ink over it, and I'm also going to use the frond that I used as the mask. I've stamped and cut out the phrase Merry Christmas, and I'm going to glue this onto the bottom of my pocket. To complete this and add some colour, I'm going to use some Nouveau crystal drops in a sort of a red festive berries colour. If I hadn't had red, I would have used gold or copper. You can use stamps to create your background as well. So I've just lightly touched a little bit of archival brown ink onto this pocket, and I'm going to overstamp it with a silhouette stamp. And I'm showing you these to give you an idea of what you might be able to find. These are from Craftwork cards, but I'm not sure if these are still available. And also they don't have a name to search for. But if you have any silhouette stamps or stamps that lend themselves to this sort of black inking, solid inking effect, use those instead. I like using lace on my projects, and sometimes you can remember exactly where you got your lace from. This is some lace that I picked up from a very old dusty brocante in France, and I washed it and I ironed it and I kept it, and I'm so pleased I didn't just look at that dusty box of fabric and walk on. This has been used in so many projects now, it's perfect. And if you're embellishing your pocket with something special to the recipient, you might want to include the story of that on a little note inside the envelope. In one of my pockets, I've included some little miniature photographs that I've printed off to remind a friend of mine of a happy party that we went to. Here's an example of a themed pocket, the theme being Scotland. And I found some tartan paper in my stash, and I also have a die cut of a stag's head, and this is going to look magnificent on the front of this pocket. Something about this makes me want to sit down in front of a roaring fire with a nice glass of Lafroig whiskey, but I'm going to refrain for the moment because that would lead to some very drunken and wonky crafting, and we don't want that. To create our nameplates, I've taken the remnants of the piece of card that we inked up right at the beginning of the project, and there was enough excess in there for me to cut out some neat little rectangles and use my crocodile using the smallest hole to punch little holes in the top so they look like tags. And then I've just chopped the corners off using my scissors. When all the names are written onto the tags, I'm going to thread them through the piece of twine that acts as a closure on each of my little pockets, and they're ready to be strung onto my tree. I'm going to say thank you very much for your time. Thank you for watching, as always. I hope you found this project interesting and maybe you'll give it a go yourself. And until we meet again, take care.